The title of this podcast is People Change When They've Suffered Enough. And this was definitely true for me. Despite all of my achievements and the successes, up until 7 years ago, I still didn't do the extra step of working on myself in a way that was not achievement oriented. I confuse personal development with achievement oriented. Worked on just improving my skills to achieve things or to produce a certain outcome. What I didn't do was work on myself in such a way so I could be free internally to where I can experience inner peace like all the time. That's what I didn't do. And I started to work on it. But what drove me to it was my suffering. One of the things that when people ask me, like, do you have any fears? The only fear I ever had was the fear of not reaching my full potential. And that used to keep me awake at night. As someone who is a recovering perfectionist, if you're one too, this whole theme might resonate with you of not reaching your full potential. And so I worked and worked on myself to improve, how I speak, how I express my thoughts, how I go about my business, organization, the discipline. All of that was in service of achievements or producing a certain outcome. What my efforts were not directed toward was being peaceful inside, of not being a problem for other people. And then I suffered enough. I had an event that happened that involved a relationship, and that event was a game changer for me. I knew, and for some other people, it may be a divorce or something like that. But what I know back then is that I was not going to experience any kind of internal pain or suffering like I had in the past. And if I did experience it, I wanted it to be short lived. And so, how do I make that kind of pain and discomfort short lived? The old me would have made it about trying to manipulate situations outside of myself, outside of my control, trying to influence other people, or trying to withdraw and protect myself so I don't get hurt anymore, trying to avoid situations. That's what I would have done. I've been doing everything on the outside, but doing nothing on the inside. But I knew that was only going to prolong the suffering. I don't know why that particular event in time made me understand it that clearly, but I did. And so I began to do the necessary work of just focusing on me, not about anything else. I'm worried about my little storefront, keeping that clean. I'm not looking over at the store across the street, the dry cleaners or the bakery or the antique shop. No, I'm worried about Keith Jones' little patch over here, this little storefront. And I just started to work on that. And that's all I did. And so for me, what again was the catalyst for me to change, to do something different so that I experience every day of life. I didn't want to be bothered by one negative thought. I didn't want to be bothered by obsessive thinking, of ruminating, of being anxious, whether people said or did. I didn't want any of that. To not to be able to handle life and situations that might happen. I didn't want any of that. And that was because I was done with the suffering, done with the self-inflicted suffering. And so when people ask me and they get on this path, it becomes very easy to want other people to be on the path to work on themselves. But as Rick and I did a podcast many years ago, the key with changing people is with them, is not with you. And so you lean back and you hold space to allow people to come to it when they come to it. And what will normally drive people to doing it, it will be some life-altering event, whether it was, the prospect of dying. Maybe it was something like with me, a relationship. Whatever the event is, something typically happens that make them present. Now, can they sustain it? For me, what has made this sustainable is not wanting to suffer one moment and wanting to experience joy that I wanted to endure suffering. But at the core of it is that I had suffered enough. And for the people in your life that you might want to help speed up their change or help introduce them to some kind of practice, all I can say is that save your energy. Your best chance of inspiring them is just by the way that you live and lead your life. And hopefully that's rooted in inner peace. Again, people typically change when they've suffered. enough. And so I don't enable people. I don't help with learn helplessness. I let them come to that all on their own. And in doing so, by not trying to have my happiness or my wish for them to be free of suffering as part of what I take on, I don't suffer either because I'm not attached to the outcome of whether they do it or don't. I can just love them for wherever they are, period. And so I invite you to just consider that the key to changing people is with them. And people typically change when they've suffered enough. And your key is just to hold space. Your job is to hold space and not suffer along the way and allow them to continue on their journey as they choose to do so.